I've chosen this display because it takes me back to my childhood days when, as a schoolboy in Penrith, I used to come up to Carlisle. My mother would go shopping and I'd come down to Tullie House Museum to look at the old bird gallery, where there was a display of hundreds of different cases of birds and mammals from all over Britain. Just about every species in the country seemed to be in there, and I had a great time going in, doing sketches of the different birds and animals, going home making plasticine models of them. And it was the peregrine falcon that really caught my imagination. They're an iconic species of the county. Their population actually underwent a serious decline in the 1950s and 60s, and that was due to the use of pesticides in the environment, which were building up in the food chain, and peregrines and other birds of prey at the top of the food chain were getting sublethal poisoning. In the 1980s and 1990s, the peregrine population in Cumbria built up to something like 90 pairs or so around the county. So it's one of the best places in the country to see peregrine falcons. It's always a delight to see them out and about when you're out in the countryside.
I remember when it was manually operated and positioned at the entrance to the gallery, me and my sister used to race up the stairs to push the pedal and bring it to life. I was completely fascinated by it and also a bit scared, which I think made it even more exciting. There's nothing subtle or dainty about it as it clunks along, but I think that that's why I like it. Every time I hear it wear into action, it reminds me of my visits to Tullie House as a child. The sculpture was out of action for 10 years until a local engineer happened to visit with his wife and offered to give up his time to fix it. It's now been modernised and the lion and the unicorn battle automatically every half an hour.
My Tullie House treasure would be this lovely carving, because I used to work in Carlisle Library when it was housed in Tullie House, and I well remember the cat, which was then situated beside the inn counter. Being such a tactile object, it received many strokes from the public and was regarded with much affection by many. In those days, the library decor was all in a light wood, almost the same colour as the cat. It's lovely to see it on display once more.
I've always liked the cricket match. It reminds me in some ways of school when I had to stand and watch cricket matches, very different from this one. It was painted as a commission for Mr. Howe of Stanwix, who is umpiring at the left-hand end. Well, looking at the picture, you can see a group of people in military costume who are probably the band having a quick beer between performances. The batsmen in top hats. I wouldn't like to face an Australian fast bowler in less than a crash helmet today. You wore white clothes, none of this pyjama cricket, as a friend of mine calls it, in coloured tracksuits. In the background, you can see the beginning of Carlisle's industrial period. You've got boats in the basin of the Carlisle Canal, and you've got the tall chimney of Dixon's Mill visible behind the castle, now about the only factory chimney that survives in Carlisle. And perhaps a topical note is that this is before the flood defences were built around the Eden, because you can see straight across. I like it, again, because it's the Victorians having fun. There are a lot of Victorian townscapes that show poverty, industry, the grime, the dirt. Here they are in an idyllic countryside, enjoying themselves.
When I was a child in the 50s, almost all Carlisle people used to go to Silloth on the train for a Sunday trip in the summer. This was immediately post-war, when times were still a bit hard and not many people had cars. We used to walk to the station and wait for the steam train. The carriages didn't have corridors, we just had to sit in 2 rows facing each other. When we got to Silloth, the engine had to be turned round on a big turntable, and I used to like to hang about and watch that process. We had to walk past the docks to the sand dunes at West Silloth, where the sun was invariably shining and the sea and the sky was blue, although my memory could be a bit faulty.
My object is the Badger Run, or Rock Face, and it's because it evokes such strong childhood memories, which can be said of a lot of items at Tullie House, which is part of its magic, but this one particularly holds strong in my mind, not only because it's such a wonderful centrepiece for the gallery, such a strong image and so tactile as well, but because of the very evocative words above its entrance. Enter at your own risk, and beside which is the ladder that says emergency exit for staff. And you think, well, as a child, you're confronted by this portal of darkness that clearly staff need to escape from, and what could possibly lie within? And it's that firing of the imagination, and that one just holds such a strong place in my mind, to the point where ever since I've started working here, I've never quite dared go back inside because it would ruin the magic.
This scarf represents my ongoing passion for my local team. I have supported the club since I was 9 years old, my first game being in March 1967. The passion for the club has travelled with me through my life, even when I spent over 20 years living away from the Carlisle area. I still followed the progress of the team by attending mainly away games. My love for the club has remained constant through the good times and the bad, and has represented a significant part of my life. So when I see the Carlisle United scarf at Tullie House, it reminds me of my childhood and my progress through life.
The reason I was drawn to this painting is, in the first instance, it's very, very small. And it's got really, really warm pastel colours to it. The orange, pink and purple hues are really attractive and draw you into the picture. As a child, I was brought up in Kent, and this picture just reminds me of the hot, sticky summer evenings we used to experience there. By looking at the picture, I can almost smell the summer air, and that just brings back memories of my childhood. Ironically, it wasn't until a few weeks ago I actually discovered it was actually based on a landscape in Kent, so that made it quite ironic and even more special.
I started my apprenticeship when I was 16 at Cowans and Sheldons. After a while I decided I wanted to join the Royal Navy, travelled down to Plymouth, and crossing Plymouth, the first thing I seen in the Plymouth dockyard was a Cowans and Sheldons crane, which didn't help as I was already homesick. All my time in the Navy, there was Cowans and Sheldons cranes scattered all over the world. They were in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Canada, and they always sort of reminded me of home and basically what I was missing.